Your perception is flawless, and it has never once shown you the real world. Carl Jung knew what you have been circling for years. The world is a dream you keep having, and something inside it arranges the scenery while you sleep. You have felt it. The ordinary moment a familiar room goes thin. The voices turn scripted, and the floor of reality collapses beneath you. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why. Reality occasionally feels staged. You will see that you have never touched the objective world, only the psyche's translation of it. You will learn why the same author who builds your midnight nightmares is building the room you sit in now. And you will meet the figure you have spent your life refusing to face, the one wearing the faces of everyone who frightens you. Neuroscience now calls this a controlled hallucination, and Jung mapped its architecture long before the first brain scan. The dream did not end when you opened your eyes this morning. It simply changed costumes. Jung never called the world an illusion. What he described was stranger, a reality we only ever meet as an image, authored from within. Start with something you can prove to yourself in the next 10 seconds. Look at any red object near you. That red does not exist out in the world. Out there are only wavelengths of light, silent and colorless. The red is something your brain manufactures and paints onto the surface, so convincingly that you would swear it was sitting there on the object, waiting for you. It was not. You made it. And if your mind builds something as simple and certain as the color red, then ask yourself, honestly, what else in this room you assume is out there, when it has only ever been in here. Here is where we are going, so you never have to wonder whether you have already heard the point and can leave. First, why the solid world is a picture your own mind paints. Then the figure who has been painting it without your permission, the one hiding inside the people you love and the people you fear. And finally, the single move Jung said lets you wake up without having to leave your life behind. Stay for the third one. It is the only part that changes anything. Now let us go back into the flicker, because you have been taught to look away from it, and that is precisely the wrong instinct. You are at a dinner table. The conversation is ordinary, and then without warning, it begins to sound like a rehearsed script. The room feels thin, almost two-dimensional. You look down at your own hands moving the fork, and for a moment they seem to belong to someone else, an actor you are observing rather than the body you inhabit. You are still functioning. You are still nodding in the right places, but some membrane that usually holds you inside the scene has quietly peeled away. And here is the part you have never said out loud to anyone. You are not even certain you want it to snap back to normal. Some buried part of you suspects the thin version was the honest one, and the solid version was the lie. You are not the only one who suspects this. You have simply never met anyone who would admit it first. The clinical name for this is derealization, and the rational mind treats it as an error to be corrected. Jung treats it as a window briefly left open. Here is what he understood. You do not experience the world directly. You have never once touched the objective world. What you touch, every waking second, is a psychic image of it, a translation your senses and your intelligence assemble and then present to you as reality itself. Jung put it without mercy. The world is our picture. Only childish people imagine that the world is what we think it is. Sit with the weight of that. The chair you are in is real. The floor beneath you is real. But the chair you are experiencing, the warm, familiar, solid chair, is a construction rendered inside you, from data the chair sent and your psyche interpreted. Jung called this the esse in anima, being in the soul. Reality as you live it is psychic before it is anything else. Modern neuroscience has only recently caught up to what Jung saw here. Researchers like Anil Seth and David Eagleman describe the brain as a prediction machine and waking perception as a controlled hallucination, a world generated from the inside out and quietly corrected against the senses. The proof sits in a condition called Anton's syndrome, where a person goes completely blind and yet the brain keeps authoring a seamless visual world, so convincing that they insist, without lying, that they can still see. The machinery does not need the world in order to produce the world. Jung understood this decades before the scanners existed. He did not call the flicker a malfunction. He called it a moment of accuracy. So the flicker is not the moment reality breaks. The flicker is the moment you accidentally notice that reality was always being produced. For 3 seconds, the rendering became visible. The set revealed itself as a set. And the part of you that panicked was the part that had forgotten it was ever in a theater at all. You assume the slip means something is wrong with you. The truer possibility is more unsettling. Nothing went wrong. Something went briefly, terribly right. You saw the machinery of your own perceiving, and your first response was to look away as fast as you could, because to keep looking is to ask a question you are not sure you want answered. If the world is a picture I am making, then who exactly is the one making it? But to answer that, we have to talk about the half of your life you have been trained to throw away. You have been told that dreams are degraded thoughts, leftover static, the mind idling in neutral while the body repairs itself. So you wake, the images dissolve within 10 seconds, and you conclude that you barely dream at all, or that what you dream is meaningless noise. Watch what actually happens, though. Inside the dream, the world was not hazy. It was total. You were inside a fully rendered reality with its own logic, its own weather, its own grief. You loved people there. You ran from things there. Your body produced real fear, real arousal, real sorrow, and your heart kept the rhythm of those emotions as if every one of them were happening on a waking street. And then you opened your eyes, and within a breath, the entire continent sank beneath the surface, leaving only a mood you could not explain, a residue that colored your whole morning and that you could not trace to any cause. Jung was precise about this. Almost half of our lives, he observed, is passed in a more or less unconscious state, and the dream is specifically the utterance of the unconscious, not its noise, its utterance, its speech, a nightly transmission from the oldest part of you, delivered in the only language that part of you knows. He went further, and this is the line to hold on to. The dream, he wrote, is a little hidden door in the innermost and most secret recesses of the psyche, opening into that cosmic night which was psyche long before there was any ego consciousness, long before there was a you that could say I. There was already something dreaming. So consider the possibility that the forgetting is not an accident. The rapid dissolve, the 10-second erasure, the way the night world is wiped before you can carry it into the day. What if that erasure is doing something for you? What if you were built to forget? Because if you remembered fully how real and how complete the midnight world felt every single night, you would no longer be able to trust the daytime one. The two would stand side by side as equals, and the comfortable certainty that this, here now, is the real one, the solid one, the waking one, would quietly come apart in your hands. The forgetting protects the waking dream by hiding the nightly one. You were not taught that you do not dream. You were taught to forget that you do. Let me show you how quietly this works. There was a man, call him Daniel. 51 years old, practical, the kind of man who fixes the leaking tap before anyone else has noticed it is dripping. He told everyone, with a little pride, that he never dreamed. The whole subject embarrassed him. Then his father died. And for 3 weeks, Daniel woke at 4 a.m. with his face wet and no memory of why. No images, no story, just the wet face and a grief that had clearly been somewhere all night, doing something, before he arrived. He had been dreaming his entire life. He had simply trained himself, decade by careful decade, to delete the evidence before it reached the part of him that could be moved by it. The night had always been speaking. Daniel had just learned to hang up before he heard the voice. Sit with that for a moment before we go on, because the same hand that erased Daniel's dreams is at work on yours. But the dream does not stay politely on the other side of sleep. That is the mistake. That is the thing nobody warned you about. The same author who built the world you walked through last night does not clock out when you wake. He picks up his tools and he gets to work on the room you are sitting in right now. So let us watch the dream operate while your eyes are open. She is sitting in a meeting. There is a colleague across the table, and everything about him is setting her teeth on edge. The arrogance of him, the way he takes up space, the way he assumes the room is his, the unearned certainty in his voice. She is certain she is reacting to him, to a real man, doing real things, in a real room. She is half right. The man is real, the room is real, but the heat in her chest is not coming from across the table. It is coming from behind her own ribs. The arrogance she cannot stand is her own disowned ambition. The hunger she was taught long ago was unbecoming. The wanting she exiled so thoroughly that she can now only recognize it when it appears on someone else's face. She is not reading him. She is reading her own handwriting, projected onto him in the dark, and calling it observation. Jung called this projection, and beneath it, the older condition of participation mystique, the primitive state in which the boundary between subject and object has not fully formed, in which what is inside you and what is outside you bleed into one another without your consent. He was direct about the stakes. The supreme aim of the opus, the great psychological work, is conscious realization, and the first step is to make oneself conscious of contents that have hitherto been projected. This is the architecture of the waking dream. You move through your days believing you are responding to a world that exists independently of you. But the people you love are draped in your longing. The people you hate are wearing your shadow. The stranger who unsettles you on the train is carrying, without knowing it, some piece of your own unlived life. You are not walking through a neutral world. You are walking through a world heavily colored scene by scene, by a part of you that never asked your permission and that you have never met. And this is the detail that should make the hair on your arms stand up. The room does not become less real because of this. The floor does not dissolve. Your colleague's voice does not turn to static. The dream is not a hallucination laid over reality. The dream is the reality, the only one you will ever have access to, produced continuously from the inside, rendered so seamlessly that the seams are invisible to you almost all of the time. Almost. Because every now and then, the rendering slips. A person you have known for years says something, and for one disorienting second they seem like a stranger wearing the mask of themselves. A place you love suddenly feels staged. That is not the dream breaking down. That is the dream becoming, for an instant, visible. The projector briefly throwing its light where you can see the beam. You thought you were a person reacting to events. You are closer to a dreamer, walking through your own projection, mistaking the figures on the screen for the world. And the most charged figure on that screen, the one you flee from most reliably, is not your colleague and not your ex, and not the stranger on the train. It is the one you have spent your whole life trying not to recognize. And this is where it stops being about the world. There is a dream you have had more than once, maybe in different houses, in different cities, but underneath it is the same dream. You are being followed or hunted. There is a figure, dark, faceless, patient, and you run from it through rooms that keep multiplying, and you wake with your heart slamming and your sheets damp, exhausted before the day has even begun. And then you get up, you go to work, and at some point that day you meet a boss or a situation or a particular kind of person, and your body floods with the exact same terror. The same animal need to flee. The dream did not stay in the dream. It put on a suit and waited for you in the waking world. Jung had a name for the figure in the corridor. He called it the shadow, the inferior part of the personality, the sum of all the things you have refused, the painful thoughts and feelings and impulses you intentionally pushed out of sight, plus a great deal you never consciously chose to bury at all. And he was unsentimental about what it costs to face it. To encounter the shadow, he said, is a true labor, not a meditation, not an insight you collect and move past, a labor. Here is the part that gentler frameworks will not tell you. The monster you keep fleeing in the recurring nightmare is not a stranger. It is you. It is the disowned self, wearing the world's faces, chasing you down corridor after corridor for one reason. It wants to be let in. The terror you feel is not the terror of being destroyed. It is the terror of being reunited with something you abandoned, something that has been carrying, in exile, the very qualities you most need and most fear. So the reflective work is this, and it is not comfortable. The next time the world fills you with that specific dread, the next time a person or situation triggers the old animal flight, stop running. Turn around inside the feeling. Ask the figure what it wants. Not what it is doing to you, what it wants. Because the thing chasing you has been trying to deliver a message you have spent decades refusing to sign for. You believe that if you turn and truly look, you will not survive what you see. You believe the fear is holding something together, that the entire structure of you is braced against it, and that if it goes, you go with it. It is not true. The fear is the one wall in this house that was never carrying any weight. It was only ever painted to look like it was. And there is a test hidden in all of this, a quiet one, that tells you exactly where you stand. If you can see the illusions in everyone else's life with perfect clarity, if you can diagnose your friends and your family and your ex with surgical precision, name their patterns, their projections, their blind spots, and yet you cannot find a single one of your own, that blindness is not insight. That blindness is the dream protecting itself. The one place the projector cannot illuminate is the projector. The shadow's first defense is to convince you the darkness is always in someone else. You have been told the call is coming from outside the house. It is not. It never was. The monster is you, asking, in the only language it has, to finally come home. But what happens to a person who stops running and turns and looks? What happens after that? Here is what they do not warn you about. When you stop running from the figure, you do not arrive at relief. You arrive at grief. She has a good life. By every visible measure, she built the things she was supposed to build. The house, the career, the relationship that looks, from the outside, like an answer. And one ordinary afternoon, she stands in the middle of all of it and feels the floor of certainty tilt because a question has surfaced that she cannot put back down. Did I choose any of this? Or did I sleepwalk here, one reasonable decision at a time, until I woke up inside a life that fits like a coat tailored for someone else? This is the grief of the unlived life, and Jung treated it as one of the most serious afflictions a person can carry. Not the pain of the things that went wrong, the pain of the things that never happened, the self that was set aside so quietly, so reasonably, over so many years, that no single moment of betrayal can be pointed to. You did not lose your life in a catastrophe. You misplaced it in increments, and now, awake for the first time in a decade, you can feel the weight of every increment at once. If you have ever stood in the middle of a good life and felt this, and assumed it meant something was broken in you, hear this clearly. You are not the only one standing in a life that no longer fits the person wearing it. It is not a malfunction. It is the most accurate thing that has happened to you in years. The rational instinct here is to treat this as a breakdown, to medicate it, manage it, schedule it away, get back to functioning as quickly as possible. But Jung saw this disorientation as the necessary threshold of individuation, the long process of becoming who you actually are. The dissolving of the old borrowed self is not the disease. It is the cost of admission. You have to lose the illusion before you can find the self underneath it. And losing the illusion feels, from the inside, exactly like losing your mind. Because here is what you are actually grieving. Not the house, not the career. You are grieving the smallness of the dreamer you took yourself to be. Jung was clear that the ego, the I you have been defending your whole life, is only the center of the field of consciousness. It is not the totality of the psyche. It is a single wave, briefly raised, on the surface of an ocean so old and so deep that it was producing dreams before the first human ever woke to name one. The collective unconscious, he called it. The sea beneath every separate wave, which means the self you are mourning was always only a fraction of what you are. The grief is real, but it is the grief of a wave discovering the ocean, and what looks at first like the end of you is the moment the dream you have been trapped inside finally turns lucid. So how do you wake up? Not the way the marketplace sells it to you. There is an entire industry built on the promise that waking up means escaping, dissolving the self into pure awareness, ascending out of the messy human world into some clean white silence where nothing can touch you. Jung distrusted that exit, and so should you. That is not waking up. That is a more sophisticated way of leaving the theater while the dream goes on without you. You do not wake up by escaping the world. You wake up by staying inside it with your eyes finally open. She feels the flicker again, the same one from the beginning, the room going thin, the voices going scripted, reality loosening at its edges. But this time, something is different. This time, she does not grip the table. She does not blame fatigue. She recognizes it. Oh, there it is, the set, showing itself as a set. And instead of panicking, she does the unthinkable thing. She stays awake inside it. She lets the dream be a dream and remains, consciously, its participant. Jung gave this a method. He called it active imagination, and it is the closest thing he ever offered to becoming lucid inside your own life. My aim, he wrote, is to bring about a psychic state in which my patient begins to experiment with his own nature, a state of fluidity, change, and growth. Not to wake up out of the dream, to become awake within it, to turn and face the figures the unconscious sends, the shadow in the corridor, the longing on the stranger's face, and to engage them consciously instead of being moved by them blindly. In practice, it is quieter than it sounds, and stranger. You sit with the figure that haunts you, the one from the corridor, the one whose face keeps appearing on the people who frighten you, and instead of analyzing it from a safe distance, you let it become real enough to speak. You ask it the question, and then, against every instinct, you wait for the answer to arrive on its own, in words you did not author. Jung insisted that the figures of the unconscious are not symptoms to be decoded, but partners to be met, with their own intelligence, their own grievances, their own demands. The terror loosens the moment you stop treating the shadow as a thing happening to you and start treating it as someone trying to reach you. You do not conquer it, you negotiate with it. And slowly, the thing that chased you down every corridor of your sleeping life sits down across from you and begins, at last, to tell you what it has been carrying on your behalf. And out of that conscious engagement, something Jung considered close to sacred can happen. He called it the transcendent function, the natural process by which the opposites are united, the bridge thrown across the yawning gulf between what you know and what you have refused to know. It is not the conscious mind winning. It is not the unconscious flooding in. It is the third thing, born from holding both at once, the place where the dreamer and the dreamed finally meet and become a single, larger life. This is the turn. The flicker was never a malfunction. It was the dream briefly becoming lucid, the psyche tapping you on the shoulder and whispering that you were the one producing all of this, and you have forgotten, and it is time to remember. Perception makes reality psychic, Jung said. We live in the sort of world image that our senses and our intelligence can perceive. You are never going to touch the world directly. That door does not exist. But the world image, the dream, The picture, that is yours. That has always been yours. So waking up does not mean leaving. It does not mean the room dissolves and you float free of your life into some bright nowhere. It means you walk back into the exact same kitchen, the exact same road, the exact same flawed and ordinary world, and you know now who is dreaming it. You stop being a figure inside the dream and you become its author. You call the soul back from everything you projected it onto. You take back the ambition you cast onto the arrogant colleague, the terror you cast onto the dark corridor, the life you cast onto the version of yourself you abandoned. And you begin, consciously, deliberately, awake, to dream a better dream. Jung never called the world an illusion. What he described was stranger, a reality we only ever meet as an image, authored from within. The only thing that ever changes is whether you know. The next time the world goes thin, you will not reach for an explanation. You will not blame the coffee or the bad night of sleep. You will recognize it, the set, showing itself as a set. The dream, briefly remembering it, is a dream. And instead of looking away, you will hold still, and you will ask the only question that has ever mattered. Who is dreaming this? And what has it been trying to show me the whole time? If something in this found you, if you felt the floor tilt as you listened, then you already know this channel was not made for everyone. It was made for the ones who feel the flicker and refuse to look away. Subscribe and stay close. There is more of this descent to make, and it is better not to make it alone. The dream did not end when you opened your eyes this morning. It simply changed costumes. The question is whether you are ready to learn the name of the one wearing them.
Empaths aren't broken. They're alchemists in progress. The Alchemist's Path gives you drills, Jung-based boundaries, and 3 exclusive chapter videos to turn overwhelm into clarity. By Surreal Mind, 236-page downloadable ebook in stock. Begin now at thesurrealmind.com.